Thank you, Zenith. I'll try and live up to those expectations best I can. It's a complex uh, piece of work with a lot of moving parts. So let's see if we can fit the gears to the shafts. I'm going to be speaking to you from two major lenses. One is agriculture and the other is jobs, right? And in order to do that, I would have to project ourselves into the near future, the middle future, and the future, insofar as what agriculture is going to look like, how we believe that we can reimagine agriculture. It's not going to be the bullock cart photograph you saw in the morning. Food is going to be created as an industry. Each plot of land is not an event of nature that agriculture happens on. It's actually scientific temper that takes it from input to output. And the throughput is managed through data, measurement, decision support systems, and so on. So for the next 2 or 3, 4 minutes, let me build for you what we have a thesis on, what we think that agriculture is going to look like in India. So we're not talking about the economies of the world. We forecast that land productivity will go up between 5 and 20 times what it is today in the very near future. We are on an average only about 20% of global standards, plot size to plot size. This is going to happen. And these benchmarks are areas where they have less sunshine, less water, in fact, everything less. Less microclimates, less naturally growing stuff. Number two, and I hope that happens quickly, with the Joint Secretary here, I think we're going to look at subsidies as a thing of the past. If an enterprise cannot stand on its own 2 feet or without help beyond a point, then it doesn't deserve to exist, is what the world is coming to. The government of India, in whichever shape and form, with the compressions that it has on fiscal deficit and so on, will positively go away from the way subsidies have been delivered to way encouragement is to be delivered for finite periods of time. For example, my own enterprise, till date, we haven't touched a penny of government money, subsidies, even though it's available, just to prove a point that we could stand on our own feet viably without the crutches of easy money coming in. And there is no such thing as easy money, because with easy money follow audits and microscopes and forensics and something that little enterprises can't deal with. So it's not an easy thing to get money and digest it very simply. The third thing that I forecast happening is finance and business management on the farm. As I said, that's a plot of land, and enterprise has to be managed like an enterprise, like an industry. We see an ecosystem already developing, a huge number of startups in agriculture, in agri-tech, and in agri-marketing across the value chain. So if you go from seed to the farm gate and from the farm gate to the mouth, you're going to see a huge number of enterprises. Unfortunately, so far, the VC system hasn't quite geared up to that, but it's getting there. We, for example, are funded. We couldn't find any backers in India. We were funded from New York and London. It's as simple as that. There's nobody willing to buy an agricultural story for India. It's so basically unsexy. The internet will be used as a mechanism for delivering productivity on the soil, for technologies that will get impacted on the soil, more importantly, for price discovery and market mechanisms. It is already happening. The government has played a major role in making those platforms, and private enterprises, small ones, big ones, are creating. For example, in my own system, all our tractors, harvesters, farm machinery moving across Madhya Pradesh, 22 locations, and going on to other locations. We are building out 1,400 locations within Madhya Pradesh for the government of Rajasthan, all to be linked on an e-platform. Now, our own software keeps track of all equipment, fuel usage, amount of work done, using satellites for measuring the work, etc., using the mobile internet system to be able to upload microscopic data of even the last drop of diesel usage. So the forecast very clearly is that you will see this happening like right away. Climate is a change, is a challenge, but the attempts to defeat it and make agriculture climate-proof are already on. Huge number of enterprises and technology development, particularly in US and Israel, are looking at how to grow whatever food we need in the most adverse conditions. So this is the middle level forecast. This is about to happen. Farming will develop as a service. So we are what is called a FAS, Farming as a Service, Software as a Service company. So there is no need for this entrepreneur called a farmer. He's not going to, a farmer is, we need to redefine the farmer. He's not a guy who's digging the field and chopping the crops and threshing the wheat. He gets, either he got labor or he got machines, right? So he is, if you can imagine him as an entrepreneur that harnesses various kinds of resources, you're going to see him doing all this with all these resources available to him as a service. Given the size of the farm, he cannot afford technology and machines, and therefore he will have to rely in order to increase productivity on farming as a service. We are ourselves doing that. I will not take you to AI and automation, but the drone policy has just been announced by the government a few days ago. In the next 365 days, you can look at drones over Indian soils, not merely measuring productivity, which the Patwari used to do, and therefore the MSP, the minimum support prices mechanism, happened, but to digest these images, turn them into data on how much is being produced, and therefore government policy on how much to intervene. And now that data is going to form part of the equation in what is essentially was a political equation of managing aspirations on the ground, meeting political aspirations on the ground. So that's on its way. You'll see that in 365 days. You'll have drones like now in the next 365 days over various parts of the country, measuring what's under the soil by measuring the colors of the leaves of growing plants to be able to detect exactly what's under the soil and therefore apply the necessary amount of nutrition or plant protection chemicals. So you're going to see a decline in fertilizer and pesticide consumption with digital data moving in. As you can see, I am leading into all this one or two more points. The first one, I'll just close on this piece after that. No one service provider can afford to buy equipment endlessly. There is enough equipment available in the universe, the local universes in India, whether you take them as states or zones or whatever, agroclimatic zones, to be able to be harnessed on Uber platforms. We ourselves are called the Uber of agricultural equipment. And so you'll find many, many enterprises with a $400 billion output leading on to a $1 trillion output for agriculture. You're going to see all this changing. Hundreds of enterprises of this kind are bound to come up. And lastly, the sale of farm produce was essentially the so much wheat and so much fruit and vegetables and so on. The latest output of agriculture is going to be solar power and renewable energy. So turning residues, agricultural residues into energy and large areas into generating power. Now that power has gone down to what, 2.4 rupees per unit on solar, and it's beating the grid by about 50%. You're looking at this as a future. And I wanted to spend these few minutes particularly through the lens of agriculture and jobs, because to imagine agriculture in the number of jobs in the manner that we are doing would be unfair. If these mega trends are here, like 365 days or 730 days, right, are you going to be counting the number of jobs, or are you going to be counting the output per job created? And the nature of the jobs, from do biga zameen, tilling the soil with his bare shoulders, to the bullocks of a couple of years ago, to autonomous tractors are in existence in India as we speak, right? That job is going to shift. Now, if it is turning the soil to harvesting, these are mechanical jobs, whether it's crop spraying or this is what used to be done mechanically with hand pumps and so on, or tilling the soil or seeding. These were drudgery filled human labor jobs, right? Now, in the few years to come, months to come, and maybe 2 or 3 years to come, machines are taking over. More and more machines will get it. The vibrancy of the ecosystem of machines is clear to all of us. Now, India, for example, requires 3 million farm machine operators, not tractor drivers. 3 million farm machine operators in the course of the next 5 to 6 years, maybe 10. I mean, you can choose what equations you will. But order of magnitude, you're talking millions. We produce certified 2,000 of them a year, right? Where are these going to come from? So right now, those guys are out there, whoever's operating them, they're out there ruining machines with no care about the condition of the machines or the diesel they generate. So it's not as a business. So these businesses are going to get created. Companies that are in the business will obviously absorb them. Those that don't, if we produce that kind of thing and those kinds of numbers, they'll go out there and create their own micro enterprises to deliver farm services, right? So the core is this. The Indian software revolution, we are extremely proud of it, wouldn't have happened if somebody didn't wake up and create an NIIT of software and said, we will produce the foot soldiers of digitization. And that's what created our revolution. The agri-revolution sits on the number of jobs we can create to use what this reinvented future of agriculture. So now with that, let me, I'm not going to, I had a couple of thoughts on the way here in the car on the technologies that are coming, but that's the subject of another discussion. But let me just summarize that. You name the operation in agriculture, it is about to be digitized, it's about to be mechanized. You want to read pesticides, you want to read plant diseases, it's now being done with a photograph on your camera, digitized and sent into an Israeli computer, read back in 3 minutes with the molecules you need and the amount of spray you need for a given area of farm. So it's about to be disrupted, and I'll be honest, I don't know whether it's 365 days or 4 years, but it's coming. Now, what therefore it means as far as this gathering is concerned is the kind of jobs have to shift. Now, what I'm appealing for is the following from this platform. That to reimagine this, the basic level of job creation in agriculture has to be mechanization. That is the muscular stuff done by machines, right? That's the first thing to do. The second thing to do, perhaps a year, 2 years from now, is to start looking at what happens when things get digitized. And people are able to operate these digital devices on farm to be able to do that. Zenith, you talked about fintech. Now, in order to empower the farmer to use these technologies, it's not going to be possible for the farmer himself to use it, right? It's, or maybe it will in a couple of years. I can already see smartphones gathering momentum. I mean, at least in one family out of 4 or 5 phones, only 4 are feature phones. One is a smartphone. So somebody in the family or the near family has a smartphone. They're able to use this. And the speed at which they're adapting to apps is humongous. So fintech, for example, is the subject of the movement of money connected to the reservoir of money, which in this case is the Kisan credit card, or indeed microcredit from banks or other institutions, to the effort on the ground, whether it's inputs he buys or fertilizer he buys or services that he takes, right? There are at least a dozen startups in India that are already working on linking this. I wouldn't be surprised if you have a mega announcement any day in the next few days or few months saying we've cracked the code between UIDAI, KCC. The technologies are already in position. It's a question of linking them, right? Huge. Now, what this will mean on the ground is the delivery of credit to farmers and the recovery mechanism. These jobs are going to get outplaced because they're going to start getting compacted onto a machine. What are we going to do with those people, right? Let's take women entrepreneurs. That's always been a personal source of... every cluster that we talk about requires somebody to aggregate demand, somebody to deliver services right at the, not the last mile, as the Joint Secretary spoke about, which the government said it doesn't have the capacity to do, and the local entrepreneur has it. Creation of lakhs of women who will do this on the ground. And I've seen already groups of women in Madhya Pradesh on it. So I'll kind of try and round off. I hope I'm not over time. And you haven't given me a signal. T, 1 minute. I read you loud and clear. All right? So large as the subject is, Zenith, it's so large that compacting it in a little while is a tough one. So short couple of summaries. Technologies are already disrupting what we call agri jobs. We'd better hurry and create the foot soldiers. Otherwise, we're going to have that 3%, 2.5%, minus 1% growth. That's not going anywhere unless we do that. We have to mechanize. We have to technologize the farm. And I think without waiting for the government or policy to do that, I've already seen it happen in one industry before, telecom. We'd already finished building the first 3-4 years of telecom before any policy came in. So the ideal thing to do is get on with it. Policy and regulation will follow. Yeah. And I guess we'll just chat about more stuff as we go along. Thank you.